Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Wednesday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early, 3:30 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, let me say this. When I found this story this morning, I stopped my search. As soon as I saw the story, I knew this is the story that I have to talk about. If it gets views, if it gets likes or whatever, it doesn't matter. I need to talk about this story. I've been working on it for the last hour and a half, writing down. I got so many points here. I could probably do an hour-long video on this, but I'm not gonna. Um, Over the last hour that I've been working on this, I feel so much anxiety just by picturing what I'm going to talk about. My head is pounding right now. I never get headaches, so it's already taking a toll on me. All right, let me say this first of all. This video, the reason for this video, the reason for this channel, a big reason I think I'm even here is to help people get into recovery. I've been clean and sober now for over 15 years and 7 months, completely clean and sober. Not one drop of alcohol, not one pill, no, not on one line, no nothing. And they have been, without a doubt, they have been the happiest, best years of my life. I remember thinking particularly, how am I gonna, because I used to love beer, and how am I gonna survive? How am I gonna socialize? How am I gonna be around other people? How am I gonna have relationships? I had never had intimate relationships, I had never had an intimate encounter in my entire life since I was 14 without using something, and I was terrified. And these have been, without a doubt, the best. In the intimate encounters, the best in my life over the last 15 years. So the purpose of this video is to help people into recovery, not to promote or glamorize drugs, not to do that. Okay, the story is in British Columbia, one of 10 provinces in Canada, the westmost province, I believe, in Canada. They are going to decriminalize all drugs for 3 years, starting on January 1st of next year, 2023, for 3 years until 2026, and then they can reapply. Okay, so up to 2.5 grams of cocaine, methamphetamine, opiates, fentanyl. These drugs will be legal to carry. They cannot, if they come across somebody, if the police come across somebody with the drugs, they won't take them away and they won't arrest them. They won't take the drugs away. I got some issues with this. Now, it's still illegal to import the drugs, to sell them, to import them or export them. You can't use these while driving a motor vehicle. You can't use these, you can't have them on you with a minor in the car. You can't use them on any kind of craft or boat. There's exceptions, but for the most part, it's going to be legal to possess these. Now, the reason behind this is they don't want to stigmatize people. They don't want people to get caught up in the legal system. And a lot of the people in this this province, are indigenous, or I love this. I wish they did this in America. They call it First Nations in Canada. Now, here I'm called the Native American, or an Indian, or Chief. But in Canada, it's called First Nations, and I freaking love that. I wish to God they did that in America. I wish they had the respect for the original inhabitants of this continent to call us First Nations, but that's for another video. So this is the reasoning behind this: is they don't want to stigmatize it. They don't want people to hide with their drugs. And this is another thing that all the articles and links will be down below. They don't want people to use alone. So because people that use alone die alone. And I applaud that they're thinking out of the box, that they're making an effort. It really seems like, from all the articles I read, every article, probably at least twice, the at least 5 articles down below. And without a doubt, their heart is in the right place. But I use these drugs on a daily basis, with the exception of methamphetamine. 15 and a half years ago in this particular area of the country, and even now, it's almost impossible to find methamphetamine in Connecticut. I believe. I haven't been looking for it, but back when I was using it, was not here. So I've used these drugs. I was addicted to these drugs. And I want to point out my point of view on this. I think this is a very bad idea. I do not think it's going to get people help. I think it's going to cause damage to people like me in recovery. Okay. So I told you guys what this law is going to deal with. Now, the reason for it is they don't want to get people caught up in the legal system. That's one of the reasons. One of the reasons, let me tell you this, whenever I went to seek help, I've told you guys before that I went to first go to a detox to get the drugs out of your system, to try to, usually for 3 days, 3 to 5 days. And then you go to a rehab, detox and rehab. I went to at least over 13 detoxes trying to get clean in the period of about 4 or 5 years. At least 4 or 5 rehabs after detox. The only time I went to seek help is when I had run out of drugs, when I did not have drugs on me. And one of the biggest things that got me to go to seek help, I got arrested once for attempting to possess narcotics. And I dealt with the police. I did community service. I got it knocked down. There was a bunch of technicalities, and I got lucky. And it was dropped. But I knew, because I talked to the prosecutor, I talked to the judge, I talked to a couple judges. I knew that if they kept seeing my face, that I was in the system. And I knew at that point that the police knew me, the prosecutor knew me, the judge knew me, and the next time they saw me, and then the time after that, pretty soon I'm going to end up in jail. And one of the things that got me into recovery was being terrified of going into lockup, into jail, because I was addicted to opiates, and I needed those opiates every day. To picture myself all of a sudden being put in jail without the opiates, and here in this area, in this country, there is no help. You go into jail and you detox. That means you mess yourself. You have stuff coming out of every orifice. You do not sleep for 5 seconds for a good 4 or 5 days. It is horrific, the detox. And to do that while behind bars with other predator inmates around terrified me. That's one of the reasons I went to get help. That was one of the biggest reasons I got help. So this is no longer going to be a motivator for people there. All right, let me talk about this too. We're talking about 2 different kinds of drugs here: stimulants and uppers and downers, to make it simple. Opiates, downers, and the nature of these drugs, the way they make you feel. There's a natural paranoia. You don't want to be around people. Let me tell you this. Just recently was the 5-year anniversary of me losing one of my good friends, Paulio, we'll call him. And he was almost the same age as me, a couple years younger. And he continued using cocaine. And he died of a heart attack at 48 years old. I remember the last time I saw him, he came over to my house. And he was dripping sweat. We call it geeking here. And he was paranoid. He honestly told me that there was planes and helicopters following him, and he was pointing up in the sky. I had a necklace on, and he thought there was a camera in my necklace. This is what happens when you use these drugs. These people aren't going to all of a sudden come out in public and use on a park bench and flag down an officer and say, geez, I know these drugs are not doing me any good. You think you could get me help? I knew when I used these drugs, either the downers, I'd be nodding out, drooling on myself like this, or I would be geeking, as they call it, pouring sweat, almost being able to see my heart pounding underneath my shirt, and my jaw going like this, so I couldn't even talk, grinding my teeth. And I knew I was doing that, so I would never go out in public. This is part of the using. So to think that if all of a sudden you removed the police out of this ordeal that people would all of a sudden come out and use in public is a ridiculous thought. I got to keep moving on here. I could keep talking about each one of these. Let me bring this up. Let me bring this point up. Hoarding. There's a show on TV called Hoarding or Hoarders. Okay, this is another mental issue, a mental disease, where people, usually because of past issues, they fill up their entire house. They don't clean. The toilets stop working. They fill up the entire house with bags and junk. They never throw anything away. Now, if you ever watch this show, the only time these people get help is when they're at rock bottom, when they're going to lose their house to the town or the city or whatever. It's going to be condemned. It's going to be taken away. That is the only time you ever see these people getting help. If you told these people that hoard, well, you're always going to be able to keep your house. There's never going to be repercussions. We just want you to be able to talk about it. It's ridiculous just hearing myself say that. These people would not go for help. They wouldn't be forced into getting help. The only time, like I said, the only time I ever sought help was when I could no longer buy drugs. And that's another point. 2.5 grams. Some of the agencies in Canada argued, they said it was a ridiculously low amount. That's like $200 worth of drugs. That's usually pretty much the most I bought at any one time. Drug addicts do not have a lot of money, and they to buy $300-400 worth of drugs. Some agencies in Canada wanted 5 grams, and that would be like $300-400 worth of drugs. And most addicts don't have that money to begin with. Their argument is that if you put it at 2.5 grams, then these addicts are going to look for stronger drugs. No, addicts are always seeking the strongest drugs. Just because they have the amount of money they have does not change the fact that they're looking for the best, strongest drugs. That argument goes right out the window. Lastly, I see I'm running along on time. I could talk about this for an hour. Like I said, I commend the fact that Canada, British Columbia, that they're thinking outside the box, that they're trying to do something. But let me point this out. As a recovering addict, do you think I want to see somebody sitting on a park bench? I go by on my bike and I could smell methamphetamine or crack, because you can't smell it, and see somebody using? You know what that would be? That would be a huge trigger for every person in recovery. The thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in recovery that have stopped using drugs to now see, hear, and smell this would be a huge trigger to start using again. I guarantee you that the relapse rate would go through the roof. This is something, if this city I live in suddenly did this and made all drugs legal, I would move out of this city without a doubt. I'd move out tomorrow. I would live in a box in another city before I would live here if it happened here, because I know that the first time I'd be able to resist, but sooner or later, if I kept seeing and smelling and hearing it over and over again in public, like it was okay, that more than likely I probably would eventually relapse and use again. Like I said, I commend them for doing something, and especially because most of the people they're trying to help are Indigenous First Nations people. But they also have a lot of money going into recovery. I think it was over like $12 million grant, and that's great. What they need is more beds so that people don't have to wait, because there is such a huge demand. The people that already hit bottom want help, and a lot of times they can't get a bed. That is the biggest problem. Not because they fear getting arrested, not to mention the money. Where do you think this money is going to come from? This 2.5 grams of drugs every day that's now legal. Addicts don't have jobs. Where do you think they're going to get this money? Where do you think your burglaries, your muggings are going to go up? I have nothing to gain or lose by this, but this is the truth. This is why I got so tense when I saw these articles. Like I said, I commend them for thinking out of the box, but I think it's a very bad idea, decriminalizing all drugs in British Columbia. You guys, the links are down below. Have a great Wednesday.